So each panelist will have, as I said, about 15 minutes for the presentation, and we'll begin with Chairman Macarro.
Good afternoon. It's good to be with you here right now, speaking to you. My name is Mark Macarro. I'm the tribal chairman for the Pechanga Band of Luiseño Indians in Temecula, California. Now, my tribal nation, Pechanga, is both a place and a people. There's a duality that characterizes, I think, what I'm about to talk about. We have public Pechanga. That's what you see with our casino and our resort. It's 2 miles off Interstate 15, an hour north of San Diego, about 100 miles outside of Los Angeles, and it's in the heart of Temecula's wine country. And then there's the other Pechanga. It's the hands-off, leave-us-alone Pechanga. Stop messing with our old village sites and destroying our cultural and religious landscape Pechanga. In the next few minutes, I hope to convey an explanation of the effect of treaty non-ratification on Pechanga and why we are where we are, literally and otherwise. Have you ever wondered, now I'm speaking to the tribal people out there, have you ever wondered what your world might look like if the treaty to which your tribe is party maybe got lost on its way to Washington, D.C., or was never ratified? And would it matter? Well, that's what happened to us. In January of 1852, the Temecula Treaty was signed, and it was the 17th of 18 treaties that were negotiated with Indians, with tribes in California between 1851 and 1852. Upon the return of these treaties to Washington, D.C. in September of that year, 1852, the United States Senate, in their customary executive session in which they convene on to address treaties, not only failed to ratify these 18 treaties, but under pressure from the California Congressional Delegation, the Governor of California, and others, they placed an injunction of secrecy on these treaties. Nobody saw them for 53 years. This 5-decade period ended up being a period of acute dispossession. So a little bit about us. We, Teméeku Eviction, people of the West, we Luiseño Indians, we are an ancient people. We believe, for instance, that the world was created in our valley, in the Temecula Valley. Echva Teméeku is the name of the creation place. Uchanat is our word for bison. And the only bison that are ever found in the ground, the remains, happen to be Pleistocene bison. Now, aboriginally, in our valley, there are 2 river drainages, and aboriginally, there were upwards of 30 villages of Teméeku Eviction in this Temecula Valley. But by the late 1860s, there was but one. And that village was called Teméeku. Now, in this period, not having treaties or paper title to hang on to, the 1850s, the 1860s, leading into the 1870s, there were lots of settlers coming into the valley. Gold had certainly been well established in that it was in California, and there was an influx of settlers coming in. One of the dynamics that our people talked about, were walking fences. The Indians would get up in the morning, and the fences that settlers had across the way had all of a sudden moved. And this would go on week after week, month after month, year after year. The fences just kept walking. They kept getting closer and closer. And these would get reported to the Indian agents. These encroachments amounted in the end to dispossession and takings of land by the settlers. In 1869, a couple of sheep farmers, one fellow named Domingo Pujol and the other Francisco Zanjorjo, established paper title to the land underlying our ancient village and our last village. They were able to plead their case in federal district court, and they got the court to side with them. So in 1873, the court ruled in favor of the sheep farmers, and the court just went one next step to issue a decree of ejectment, a forced removal of our people. This was appealed by our tribal leadership, our captains and our chiefs for about a year and a half. And then on a certain date in September, actually I think it was September 20th, 1875, the San Diego County Sheriff, Sheriff Hunsaker, showed up with an armed posse to create the ejectment. The ejectment was carried out by this posse. It was armed, like I said. It was in the middle of the day with mostly elders, women, and children. The men were off on other ranches and stuff doing labor work that at that time they sustained them. Yeah, I'll get to that in just a second. And so, surrounded by guns, they were only allowed to take whatever they could carry in their arms. And they were loaded onto wagons. They were taken 2 miles away from that site, and they were dumped next to a dry sand wash there. Any property of value that was remaining was seized for recouping court costs. Crops in all brush homes were burned and destroyed, and all herds of stock were seized. Now, in the weeks following the ejection, sometimes the Indian stock would find their way back to their Indian owners, under which the Indian owners would then, or former owners, would be arrested and charged with rustling, and then fines had to be paid to remedy those situations. So this, let me catch up here with these charts here. These are the 18 treaties in California. It's about 1/7 of the land base of California, about 7.5 million acres, comprising all these lands. The Temecula Treaty's down here, and right below it's the Santa Isabel Treaty, and they were the last two negotiated. But this was the package of 18. This is a blow-up of that shape down there, and this is the Treaty Temecula land. Just for reference, these black and white lines are current-day freeways. So this is Interstate 15 going to Corona and Orange County, Los Angeles. This is Interstate 10 going on its way to Phoenix, but Palm Springs is up here. Banning Pass is up here where Morongo is. Temecula is down here. This is Lake Henshaw and Palomar Mountain, and this is the Salton Sea. So there's some of the biggest mountains in Southern California would have been inside this reservation. That's present-day Pechanga. That's our current reservation with the overlay of the treaty lands. A lot of it is actually outside of what was going to be the treaty. The treaty contained signatories from 33 villages and 4 linguistic groups here, our neighbors here in California, in Southern California. This is present-day overlay of the current reservations as they exist now. It might have been a mess had this treaty not been ratified, but we'll never know. So the location that we were evicted from was on a bluff right here. This was the Teméeku village. This dot represents the place where there was an adobe house where the actual Treaty of Temecula signing occurred. You can see how revered history is in Southern California anyway, and the rapid development that's taken place. Neither of these locales actually exist. They're under neighborhoods and thousands of homes. The path of the eviction and the wagon trail is right here, this dash trail, and people were dumped right over here in this vicinity. So in the 1880s, after the eviction, one of the things that occurred was that a woman named Helen Hunt Jackson came into the valley, and she was tasked with writing a report on the condition of the Mission Indians. It's a term we don't use, but for about a century, we were identified as a lump sum, an aggregate homogenized group on paper of Mission Indians. And she became appalled at the abject, dishonorable actions of the United States, and she published this book, The Century of Dishonor, to profile some case studies across Indian country and the treatment. And then she wrote a thinly veiled work of fiction called Ramona, and the central plot in that fictional work is, in the story of Ramona, is the eviction of the Temecula village. So if you come across those texts, that's what she's talking about. Those are my people she's talking about. So that period from the eviction, from 1875 to 1882, about 7.5 years, our people were literally homeless in our Aboriginal homeland. We had no paper title to anything, and it was a really tough period of time. Most of the people that were evicted from that village stayed together, and I'll explain what happened next. A few of them left the group, and they chose to live with families elsewhere throughout Southern California. Now, this all changed on June 27, 1882, when President Chester Arthur signed an executive order creating Pechanga Indian Reservation. And so since then, at least in Indian country, we've been known as an executive order reservation, which is a bit of a pejorative, I'll say. The initial creation of the reservation was 4 section squares, about 2,500 acres, and it was about 2 miles up valley from where everything took place, the eviction and where they lived. There's a spring on the reservation. It's called Pecha'ak Spring, or Pecha'ak. It means where the water drips. Pecha'anga is a locational form of that word. Pecha'anga means at the place where water drips. This ancient spring was the only water source for the people then in 1882 up all the way through 1975, when the first water system, in working in conjunction with IHS, was created on our reservation. So that spring is our namesake today, named after the Pechanga Spring. Regarding treaty claims, I'll just address that briefly, but I think the exhibition is going to do that quite well. So in January of 1905, 53 years after being put under an injunction of secrecy, the treaties were unsealed and read in a session of the United States Senate. This led to an act of Congress in 1928. Congress passed the California Indians Jurisdictional Act. The purpose was to allow California treaty tribes to bring suit for the taking of land without compensation. The court case was known as K-344. Now, as a result of that process, 33 judgment rolls were established and finalized in a 1944 congressional settlement. The outcome of that settlement, and these treaties not being ratified in the takings of the land, was a paltry and insulting $17 million, which was awarded for 7.5 million acres of land that was stolen through cessions that were made under these treaties. Now, out of that 17 million, 12 million was deducted to cover litigation expenses, which left $5 million for distribution. So in 1950, Congress authorized 150 pro rata to those on the judgment rolls to be distributed. And that's brought an end at least to that particular chapter. But as you heard in the previous discussion, it doesn't really end. So this is the Pechanga schoolhouse that was built on our reservation in 1895. This is what it looks like now. And it kind of looked like this most of my lifetime. And so about 1955, 56, there were multiple attempts by the Riverside County, because there was a new county that was established in 1893, Riverside County. County Roads Department officials, working together with the BIA, were trying to put a two-lane road through our reservation. To that point, we had been a closed reservation. Our people said no to these attempts. We don't want the road, go home. There were multiple attempts, as I said. Well, one day, they made this one particular Sunday trip, and they said, look, we've already told you no, there's nothing to discuss, and we mean it. And they picked both men up, and they threw them out the windows. These windows here, they threw them out and onto the ground. It's called defenestration. It's an act of political, it's a political act of defiance, among other things. And suffice to say, they never returned. The road was never built, and that was one of the first small victories for us, standing our ground. So now one day about 1980, our tribal leadership was looking at a map of our reservation and comparing it to the original set-aside, and they noticed something interesting. There was an odd asymmetry here with a stair step, and it appeared that the logic of this of the original creation of the reservation should have had a line running to this corner and then down, or along one of the rancho land grants here. This is 356 acres. So some research ensued, and the research discovered that the original title holder of this land, a fellow with the French name of Peter Morin, idiomatically they called him Pedro Moreno, had a fraudulent patent or fee patent on that land. And once he sold the land transferred, and the current owners of the property in that time span, 1980, were Kaiser Aluminum Corporation. So we filed suit based on a clouded chain of title in federal district court, and hoping to get that land back and establish it as part of the reservation. The district court sided with KACOR Realty, and they said, look, the chain of title has been cleansed because it's passed through 6 or 7 purchasers, and the current owner has nothing to do with the clouded title or the fraudulent title. So we appealed the case in 1982, Pechanga Band versus KACOR Realty, and lost, and we lost any claims to that land. So that was that story. Now, this is what it looks like today. This is a little closer in view. This is a public high school. This is a public recreation park. Here's our casino right there. And these are thousands of homes in this neighborhood, and this is part of the reservation here. And that's a view from the ground. So in 1995, things started to change because the tribe, post-IGRA, decided to build a casino and open up the Pechanga Entertainment Center. In that environment of the casino, however, we had a governor who did not want to negotiate a compact with us, Pete Wilson. Governor Wilson refused to negotiate with tribes, so we opened up anyway. There were many attempts by U.S. attorneys to have us shut down, lots of threats, lots of paper going back and forth. Eventually, the furthest that they got was an in-ram seizure of our video gaming terminals, or video slot machines. They arrested the machines on our floor, but they stayed on our floor. Well, our defiance was only emboldened. We felt we were right. The governor didn't want to negotiate. That means he took himself out of the equation, and we forced the issue by bringing it to the voters of California. And over 100 tribes in California were on the same page in the advocacy of Proposition 1A in the year 2000, and it passed in the November election. That referendum passed on a 67% approval. That's a massive political win. And since that time, tribes in California have had the opportunity to conduct Indian gaming on their own Indian lands. So that was a huge win for us. The next episode is in 2001, where this area in blue was not part of the reservation. It had been in private ownership. It was land that belonged to the creator of Perry Mason, the Perry Mason novels, and his name is escaping me right now. Earl Stanley Gardner, thank you. And he had sold it to some folks, and we bought it from those people in 2001. And in that same time span that we purchased it, it became known to us that that company, San Diego Gas and Electric, subsidiary of Sempra Energy, they were planning to put a 500 kilovolt transmission line through that land. And we said no. And we enlisted the aid of Congress. The community didn't like it. A coalition of us, the Wine Growers Association, and 3,000 homeowners and their homeowners associations coalesced together to fight these guys. And we were successful, I'm happy to report, in front of the state's Public Utility Commission. They ruled that the plan was not well thought out. It was the wrong project for the wrong time. And so we were able to protect our great oak tree, which is at the heart of this ranch, and is known by the place name of Wiasha. That's that space where this tree exists. This tree is over 1,500 years old. It's a Quercus agrifolia, and it's still thriving. Now, the power line, the 500 kV line, would have come within 200 feet of this tree, and that was just too much to risk. So, the next episode talks about these lands right over here, and this is our current boundary today, by the way. This is Interstate 15, so these lands in yellow. That mountain in this picture we call Puesca Mountain. Puesca Mountain, or Wechelchi Puesca, is at the core of our origin landscape. It's part of our creation story and part of our religion, because it's a place where the first person ever died, where death first came into the world. It's a very long story. Anyway, on May 5th, 2005, at the urging of some local political leaders who were instrumental in our great oak protection efforts, they urged us to sit down and listen to the proponents of a mining project. So out of this obligation, we had a meet and greet with these folks, and Granite Construction's their name right there, and we listened to them. It was May 5th, 2005. It was a project overview. They had glossy PR packets, glowing economic and environmental benefits. They were touting 99 jobs would be created, no visual impacts from the mining project. And they were soliciting our input. Well, we demurred on any substantive response in that meeting. We mostly just listened. And we knew that there would be a formal project, an environmental project that would have to be produced through a lead agency, and we'd have time to comment on all those things and to kill the project there, or to work with others to kill it. Well, Liberty Quarry was proposed to be a 75-year in duration mine, 3 miles long, and 1,000 feet deep. This is what it would have looked like at year 25, at the end of 25 years. That's the Hoover Dam, that's the LA Coliseum, Dodger Stadium, the U.S. Capitol, that theater in Sydney, and the Roman Coliseum, I believe that's what that is. This is courtesy of our very good GIS in-house department at Pechanga. That's year 25. It would have gone down, 2/3 beyond that. So we said there's no way this could happen. There were actually going to be serious fugitive dust impacts, wildlife, hydrologic, and of course cultural and religious impacts. The County Planning Commission had 6 field hearings, hundreds of people attended, lots of testimony was taken. We were part of that. We ended up disclosing a lot of stuff publicly about our religion, about our culture, about why this was significant, this mountain. And we were rewarded with a 4-to-1 win by the Planning Commission, who then moved a recommendation up to the Board of Supervisors, who had a final say. So in 2012, in May, the Board of Supervisors voted 3-2 against the project. And, oh, I guess that's my last one. And so that was a great win until August of that year. Because then, I still don't understand the mechanism, but there was a second vote on the project in August. And I think they tweaked the project a little bit. And one of the supervisors flipped their vote, and on a 2-3 vote or a 3-2 vote, they approved the mining project. And not only that, they fast-tracked mining projects and solar projects in Riverside County. We did some evaluation and assessment and said, look, we're inside a process here that is extremely convoluted, and it's going to cost us a lot of money to create procedural delays, maybe some litigation delays on law that isn't really on point and not very clear. We could engage local campaigns to undo the supervisors' votes, and in the end, after 5 years, have no certainty that we're going to win and have spent maybe $10 million. After doing some other real estate assessments, we figured about $15 to $20 million it would take to buy the property from the mining company, which is exactly what we did. We met with the mining company, and in short, in November of 2012, we agreed on terms of a purchase of 360 acres on top of Puesca Mountain to buy out the property from them. They went away, and they also signed an agreement not to mine within a 6-mile radius of that mountain. And so later that month, November 15th, was declared by the city of Temecula to be Pechanga Day as a result of saving the valley's air quality and quality of life, as well as ours too. So this episode illustrates that it was a huge moral victory, even though it cost $20 million for us. It was a huge moral victory for Pechanga. And from the treaty signing, which was never ratified, to beating back this mining project, we've earned and inherited a legacy of endurance, of resilience, and tenacity. And to be sure, we don't think this is going to be the last time we have to do anything like this. But, you know, this casino, you know, we get labeled as being casino tribes or what you have. But this is a means for us to correct issues of historical equity and justice for us. It's also a means for economic development and our economic future, and gives us some road or path to be on to do things that nobody's ever been able to do for us, and only us can really do. So we've learned also, though, that given our location in geography and history, and this is another shot of our reservation, this time the casino's in it, right there. But most of the reservation's over here behind this low ridge. But given our location here, straddling 2 counties, being at a crossroads of major interstates and highways in California, we don't expect that this is the last battle we'll be involved in for some reason. But we also don't plan to go anywhere. We've been here for thousands of years, and we plan to be here for the next 1,000. So that's our story, and happy to answer any questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Chairman. And just